Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. It has been very clear within the first 24 hours and change that this Auburn Tigers program is going to be aggressive in the transfer portal over the next couple of days and weeks. Want to talk about a few names that are generating a lot of buzz for this Auburn program. Also want to offer you guys a couple of names that I'm also intrigued by for this Auburn Tigers program. Really excited to get into this one. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys. A massive shout out to the Auburn fans, all the War Eagles that you guys throw in the comment section. That fires me up. It means a ton. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, would love to hear from you guys in the comment section regarding some players that we're talking about, some players that you think you would like to see Auburn go after. Let it fly in the comments up down there. And without further ado, let's get into this one. And I want to start with the wide receiver position, which is kind of a 180 position in terms of what you were 12 months ago and compared to what Auburn is right now. When Hugh Freeze took over this Auburn program 12, 18 months ago, it was pretty much any wide receiver with a pulse in the transfer portal we're going to be going after, because Brian Harsin left us in a really bad spot. When you take a look at what Hugh Freeze is doing with the wide receiver room in this cycle, there's a lot more selectivity, if you will, in terms of identifying wide receivers that come in and make this Auburn wide receiver room better. And why they can be so much more selective is this Auburn wide receiver room is significantly better than it was 12, 18 months ago. We obviously know about Cam Coleman, but you're talking about other guys like Jay Fair, Burton, Robert Lewis, Camden Brown. You look at this Auburn wide receiver room and say, we don't need to get desperate in the transfer portal to add a wide receiver, which allows us to really only go after really some of the best wide receivers in the portal. And if there was one wide receiver that I'd probably say is the best available wide receiver in the transfer portal as a Big Ten guy myself, it has to be Keandre Lambert-Smith. And why I think this is such an intriguing fit for Auburn is, one, Keandre Lambert-Smith is a true wide receiver one at Penn State. The numbers don't reflect it because that Penn State offense is absolutely brutal when it comes to pushing the ball down the field. You put Keandre Lambert-Smith on some other offenses that have competent passing attacks and quarterback play. He's probably one going to the NFL draft, but more importantly, he's definitely a 1,000-yard receiver. And why I love this fit for Auburn so much is, one, he brings some much needed experience. As good as this Auburn Tigers wide receiver room is, it's a lot of guys that either true freshmen, guys like Cam Coleman or Perry Thompson coming in the summer, or guys that are really only going into year 2 or year 3 of their college football careers. Keandre Lambert-Smith is going into year 5. This is a guy that's been around the block, but more importantly than the experience, why I love this fit so much is he's a do-it-all wide receiver. You have a lot of different kind of Auburn wide receivers in that room. You can kind of put Keandre Lambert-Smith in this wide receiver room and say, hey, you can go work on the boundary. You can go work in the slot. But the best attribute that Keandre Lambert-Smith is he is just a super polished route runner. He knows how to create separation. That's my favorite attribute. And I think he kind of fits like a glove in this Auburn wide receiver room. He gives you the versatility. He gives you the experience that Auburn might be looking for to add in that wide receiver room. And I mean, outside of a guy like Keandre Lambert-Smith, there's not that many wide receivers that I see making this Auburn wide receiver room better, which again is a massive 180 from what we were talking about 12 months ago, where pretty much any wide receiver that got added into the transfer portal was probably going to make this Auburn wide receiver room better. I think because they're in such a healthier spot from a depth chart standpoint, Auburn doesn't need to get desperate in the transfer portal for wide receivers. Keandre Lambert-Smith would just elevate this wide receiver room. Next position I want to go to, and a position that definitely is probably going to be the biggest concern for this Auburn program, that's the inside of this defensive line. And a guy like Isaiah Rikes, a guy that Auburn went after during the first portal window in the winter, eventually ended up going to USC. I think it'd still make a lot of sense for Auburn to go after Isaiah Rikes, a guy that obviously now doesn't have the SEC rule that he can transfer within the SEC, which is good. But more importantly, is Isaiah Rikes going to be a guy that comes in and is a game wrecker for this Auburn program? Absolutely not. But I think why Hugh Freeze is wanting to get some guys on the inside is because that depth is a little bit of a question mark. And you talk about a guy that, one, is really good against the run. Again, not going to be an elite pass rusher, not going to be a double-digit sack or TFL guy, but is going to be a guy that eats double teams, allows other players on that roster to have a little bit more space and success. I think this one makes a lot of sense. Again, not a flashy addition, but a guy that increases the depth, helps you stop the run a little bit more. I think it makes a lot of sense, balances out kind of a younger interior defensive line. The other guy that I'd talk about that was just on campus for Auburn, and quite frankly, I'd say I'd prefer Philip Bleedy more than Isaiah Rakes. Philip Bleedy, not only good against the run, gives you a lot of pass rush juice as well that Isaiah Rakes probably just doesn't give you. 6'3", 295, a 10% pass rush win rate at Indiana last year. 6'3", 295. You talk about Isaiah Rakes carrying 313 pounds, Philip Bleedy carrying 295. That does not look the same. Like, Philip Bleedy carries that weight exceptionally well. He's a phenomenal athlete. Philip Bleedy kind of fires me up. And again, you're going up against some heavy hitters. Oklahoma, LSU, Auburn kind of sound like the three teams that are really going after Philip Bleedy. I think this would be a massive addition for Auburn, and probably that one target that I'd really like to see Auburn make happen over the next couple of weeks. Now, the last position that I would be looking at if I'm Auburn, I think you feel good about what you have on the offensive line. I think you feel really good about what you have in the secondary as well, and at that linebacker spot. I think maybe that buck linebacker, kind of a little bit more of an edge presence, you could probably add some guys. You have some guys like Amaris Williams, Jamonta Waller. Amaris Williams being a guy that I absolutely love as a true freshman. You could probably benefit from adding some experience. The first guy I want to talk about is both these guys are going to be really intriguing prospects for me. First one is Nigel Lee Kelly, a guy that you list all the traits that you want in an elite edge defender. Nigel Lee Kelly checks pretty much every single box, played really well as a true freshman for Miami in 2022. And then in 2023, got hurt early in the season, didn't return. He's ended up transferring out as Miami kind of phased him out of that defensive line. This is a guy that, if he gets healthy, more importantly, if he puts all those physical traits together for Auburn, you are looking at an all-conference caliber player. I think the final thing I'd say on Nigel Lee Kelly is these type of bodies in athletes, they don't grow on trees. And so when you have the opportunity to take a risk on him, I would go and make that happen. I say this a lot. We like to overcomplicate the game of football. At the end of the day, it's a size, it's a speed, it's a weight game, right? If you have the bigger, stronger, faster athletes, you are probably going to be winning a lot of football games. Nigel Lee Kelly is one of those bodies that you just want to bet on the upside and the traits that he has. And again, not one of those quote-unquote washed out top 100 prospects. He's only going into year 3, missed a full year with an injury. He played really well, really. The only time we got to see Nigel Lee Kelly as a true freshman, he played pretty well. So I wouldn't say that he's a bust in terms of only going into year 3 as a top 100 national prospect. Last guy I want to talk about, and arguably an even more interesting prospect, is Kerryon Crawford from Arkansas State. Sounds like Auburn's kicking the tires on him. Two things that excite me about Crawford. One, extremely productive as a second-year kid at Arkansas State. 27 quarterback hurries, 7 sacks, an elite pass rusher, which Auburn is looking for off the edge outside of Jalen McLeod, who is going – I mean, you got Falk, you got Jalen McLeod. If you want to add a little bit more presence on the edge in the pass rush game, this is kind of your guy. And when you talk about a guy like Crawford, I think what intrigues me the most is he's only going into year 3 of his college football career, really flashed in 2023. You go back to him at the high school ranks. This was a kid that played basketball for the majority of his high school career. I think even going into year 3 at the college level, he's still learning the sport of football for the most part. So he's got the physical traits that you want, but I think that basketball background and the idea that he hasn't played that much football kind of offers a little bit higher upside than you might see for some of these other guys coming from the group of 5 conferences. I think Kerryon Crawford makes a lot of sense. And I mean, outside of maybe potentially adding Lambert Smith at wide receiver and addressing that defensive line, I look at this Auburn roster and say, they're checking a lot of boxes heading into 2024. I think it's absolutely incredible what Hugh Freeze has done with this roster in the span of 18 months. I'm extremely impressed. I think they're in a good spot. It's going to be fun to see where Hugh Freeze decides to go. As always, we'll keep you guys updated. Would love to hear from y'all in the comment section as well. And if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.